Hey campers, happy Friday. You made it through the whole week of VBS. Now today we're going to be making a model of a tide pool, something that you guys have probably seen at the beach. So what you're going to need is an aluminum pan, and yours is smaller than mine. I have a bigger one just so that it's easier for you to see. You're going to have a container of sand. You're going to have rocks, big and small rocks here. You're going to have some shells and some plastic sea animals that would be in a tide pool, just to make it authentic. Okay, so first you need to start out with your rocks. So you're going to take your rocks and kind of put them in. Okay, the next step is to get your sand, and you're going to pour sand into the pool, the little area you created in the rocks. So we're going to pour that in. Okay, the next step is you're going to add some shells to your tide pool. Start sprinkling them in. Okay, and the last step is you're going to add your tide pool animals. I've got starfish, okay, you guys, so we've put our tide pool together. We have the rocks. We've created a nice little pool area with our sand, and we have our creatures in here. But next, what we need to do is add the water. But before we add the water, I want you to look at your tide pool and see which animals you think are going to get wet first as the tide comes in. Okay, because we have at the ocean, when you go to the beach, sometimes the water's way far out, and then as the day goes on, you're playing in the water, and pretty much at the end of the day, the water comes way up high towards where everybody's sitting. So what we're going to look at is which animals are in the water at low tide, and then which animals, as we add more water, which is going to show us high tide, you'll see which animals start out in the air and which animals end up being covered by water. Okay, so here we go. Hermit crab. Some of our rocks are underwater, but the crab right here isn't underwater. So he's moving around on the rocks. This big clam shell, the clam in there isn't underwater. Our sea stars are stuck up in the air on the rocks still. And here's the little sea anemone. They're not covered by the water yet. Okay, so what happens, okay, so we're at low tide right now. Now the day's moving on, different parts of the day have a different tide. So now we're going to move to high tide, which means I'm adding more and more and more water. And now my crab is underwater, lobster's underwater, sea snail's underwater, our little octopus is underwater, the hermit crab, some of the sea anemone is underwater. Okay, everybody, so we've got our tide pool at high tide. All the animals are underwater. Now we are going to turn it into low tide again. If you have one of these at home, that's going to help you out a lot. It's called the turkey baster. If you don't, you can just take some of the water out with a small cup like this. But this to me was more fun. So we are going to simulate the tide going back out again by sucking the water out with my turkey baster. Okay, so guys, what we saw low tide and high tide. And tides are affected by the gravitational forces. Remember, we talked about gravity and the shark falling because gravity pulls him down. So the gravitational forces of the moon and sun and earth, the earth's rotation, and the shape of the shoreline where this is all happening, okay? Now we've got lots of animals live here in the tide pools, and some animals have adapted or developed adaptations that help them survive being both in the air and in the water. Like a lobster has a hard shell that protects it and keeps it moist, okay? Now, an octopus has a different way of adapting and keeping itself safe. It can camouflage. You guys know what camouflage is? It's when it turns, the animal can turn the colors of whatever it's around. And there are fish that also do that, but they do it by sliding under the sand and keeping themselves hidden that way. So they learn to hide or to blend into the environment and keep themselves safe. Here's a crab. He's got a hard shell. Okay. Here's our clam, hard shell. Now the sea stars, they have a different kind of adaptation. They have sticky little suckers that let them grab on to the rocks in the tide pool. That's how they stay there. They could stick to it, okay? Maybe a sea snail, same idea, right? And then we have little things like anemones. They stick on to the rocks around them. There are also things called barnacles. And what they do is they group together and they stay in groups together to stick to things. And that helps keep them safe. It keeps them safe from the water washing in, waves coming in and crashing down on them. Okay, so we've got sea stars who like to cling to the rocks. We have the different animals that have hard shells that protect them and also keep them moist. Even if they're out in the dry air, their shells help keep the insides of them moist. And then we have the sneaky little octopus who can turn the different colors of wherever it's at to help camouflage itself, okay? And lots of animals have developed this adaptation, not just the tide pool animals. Think about other animals you've learned about that can camouflage themselves so that they can hide in the wild. Now, it's pretty amazing, you guys. God created all of these creatures, and he gave them the abilities to adapt to their environment. So he knew exactly what their purpose was going to be on this earth, and he created them perfectly for their purpose. And guess what? He did the same thing for you. He loves you, he created you, and he knows your purpose in life. And he created you perfectly for that purpose, okay? You just need to remember that Jesus loves you just as you are. You're created for a purpose. to be kind out in the world to other people, and that most of all, he loves you. Okay, so remember that. When you're thinking about science, remember God created all of these amazing things for us to experience, and that you can learn things about him by studying his earth. And you can learn things in science that help you understand the love that God has for us and the way that he sent his son Jesus to save us from our sin. Okay, it's been a great week with you guys. It's been so much fun being in your house with you and doing science. It's my favorite thing to do with kids. So I hope you guys learned a lot this week. I hope you had a lot of fun. And I hope that you keep doing these experiments at home. I tried to pick things for you that you could replicate at home and do over and over. And now you can play with your tide pool all summer. You can write secret messages to all your friends in lemon juice. And you can, well, you're not going to swim with sharks because that would be a little freaky, but you can appreciate the buoyancy of sharks. If you have a pet fish, now you know why your fish can float in the water and doesn't fall down to the ground, okay? But mostly I want you just to be curious about the world around you and remember that God created all of these beautiful and amazing things and that he created them for us to appreciate and to learn from. All right, guys, I'm gonna miss you. It's been fun. Have a good time. Keep doing these sciencey fun things. Bye.